I'm so excited to be here on board the world's largest charity hospital ship with you all. I think everyone in this room has had the chance to see it, and so I hope you were really inspired and that you enjoyed the tour. My name is Ropa, and I work for Mercy Ships UK, and my role is to recruit volunteers. So anyone that you may see on board, or anyone that you hear about volunteering from the UK, the chances are I got them and I convinced them to come and work here. But honestly, it's fantastic to be here with you today on this Young Leaders Day. I'm excited to be inspired. We've got three fantastic speakers for you. And so I hope that for everyone who's not only in this room, but even people who are tuning in afterwards, I hope that you'll be inspired. So the very first guest, I'm going to get off the stage and let him take it. I'm really excited to introduce him. His name is Captain Julian Schuter, and he is a captain on board, or he's a captain with Mercy Ships. Now, I discovered a fun fact about Captain Julian just yesterday, and he was actually the first captain on the Africa Mercy, which is our sister ship, and I think that's awesome. He's been involved with Mercy Ships for 25 years now, which is probably about how old I am, a little bit younger. But I just think that's incredible. That's awesome. I've been with Mercy Ships for about 3 years now, and I'm always so inspired. The stories never get old. The stories of volunteers and patients and the investment that we have across Africa, it's really inspiring. So rather than doing a very long introduction, I will let Captain Julian introduce himself. So let's welcome him. He'll be giving us a talk on knowing your compass error. So let's give him a round of applause and welcome him to the stage.
Thank you, Ropa. It's wonderful. It's actually the first time I met Ropa. This time we've been both involved a little bit in finding volunteers and finding people to serve with us. It's actually, we have big needs also, so please spread the word and please also join us whenever you're ready for it. I just had a talk already with Gerco and he's just about ready to come, so that's wonderful. Yeah. So my name is Julian Schuter. I'm one of the captains in Mercy Ships. I'm also the nautical operations manager in Mercy Ships. I thought I would take a picture of a younger myself, because we are here amongst young leaders, and I thought that's also to show, yes, I have been younger. But yeah, serving 25 years, that probably gives away a little of my age. And I've been sailing also before I joined Mercy Ships, so you can imagine. Yes. Serving 25 years in Mercy Ships is just wonderful. I joined the Anastasis, the first vessel of Mercy Ships. Actually, the name means resurrection. And 25 years ago, in October 25 years ago, I drove over the Erasmus Bridge. The Erasmus Bridge in '97 was 1 year old. I've never seen it. And I thought I would take the bridge just to get the experience of the Erasmus Bridge. I drove from the south to the north, and on my left side, I saw the Anastasis, and it said tours available. I took a tour, I met people that I knew, and before I knew it, in 5 days later, I was sailing with the vessel to Benin, and 25 years later, I'm still there. So that's also what happens, so be aware of that. If you join us, you might join us forever. And what also happened to me is that I actually met my wife in Mercy Ships on board the Anastasis. She is Swiss, that's why we spend a lot of time in the mountains, in the snow. But that also happens quite often, so be aware of that as well. We were couple 229 on board the Anastasis. We do keep track of all the couples of every ship. We have a list, and yeah, it's just wonderful. It's a wonderful place to be and to meet one another. And you can imagine, of course, you come here also with, often with a certain goal, purpose, objective in life, and you meet similar people from around the world. We have people from around 40 to 50 different nations on board our vessels. And that's also an exciting place to be and to learn from different nationalities. Today, I am going to talk a little bit about also being a leader here in Mercy Ships, also on board this vessel. This vessel, we hope to have around 650 people on board, 650 crew members, and we can have up to 125 children on board. And that's already a community. That's a wonderful community, but also with its challenges at times. Here you see a picture on the Africa Mercy. I'm somewhere in the middle as well. This is taken in Madagascar a few years ago. It was the time that we had Ebola in West Africa, and we were actually diverted to Madagascar at that time. But here you see wonderful people, families, again, around 40 different nationalities serving on board the Africa Mercy. And being one of the leaders on board, and in the end, responsible for the safety and the security of this group of people, it's a responsibility, but at the same time, it's a amazing team effort that we bring that together. I was just talking with Gerco, and he said, "Yeah, you know, you need people from all different angles, different professions, and we have those on board. We have IS specialists, we have, of course, a lot of medical staff, but we also need someone in finance. We have a bank on board. We need people from all around, all kinds of different backgrounds and experiences and professions, and we bring that together in one group of people." Now, being a leader here on board, how does that really compare to being a leader, for example, in a church or somewhere else in a company? To me, I've never been really a leader in a company or in a church, but what I think one of the biggest differences might be that we actually work and live together. This is our workplace, but in the evening we sit together, we work together, and we form one community. And maybe it is, I come back to that, but maybe it is a little bit like, and that was my expectation as well when I came on board, that it was kind of the first church coming together in Acts 2. And I'm just gonna read that section. It comes out of the Bible on Acts 2. I just want to read that. "And they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, to the fellowship, to the breaking of bread, and to the prayers. Then fear came over everyone, and many wonders and signs were being performed through the apostles. Now all the believers were together and held all things in common. They sold their possessions and property and distributed the proceeds to all. As anyone had a need, every day they devoted themselves to meeting together in the temple complex and broke bread from house to house. They ate their food with a joyful and humble attitude, praising God and having favor with all the people. And every day the Lord added to them those who were being saved." When I first joined the Anastasis, I thought this was the closest place to heaven that I could actually get to. It was already in the first year that I saw that we also have our challenges on board, and I just remember also as a leader, I was actually chief officer coming in. I 5 years later I became captain in Mership, so now about 20 years as captain. But at that time as chief officer, I was also one of the leaders, and I remember we had quite a challenge in one of our sub departments in the deck department. And I thought there was one leader over 3 others, and I thought, and the leader, they all had problems with the leader. And I was like, hey, we can resolve this. You know, we are this Christian community. We get out of this. And in the end, we didn't. Really, we didn't resolve it. We were not able to come to a full agreement, to a settlement, so that we could continue. And in the end, and that was a hard decision, in the end I had to ask the leader to step down. And actually he went to our head office in Texas. He did get a lot of counseling there as well. But in the end we had to ask him to leave the vessel. And he was on board already for, I believe, 6 years. And that was a very hard decision. This was his home. This was his place where he was and where he worked. And I also just realized that even in the closest place to heaven that I could imagine, that we had to make that hard decision. When I made the decision in the end, he didn't talk to me at all anymore. He was extremely angry with me, and I could understand that. He left, and he did get the counseling in Texas at our head office. He actually met his wife in Texas, and about half a year later, he phoned me and he said, "Hey, I'm sorry about it, and I just have come to realize that it was the wisest and best decision to send me home. I needed that, and I just know that, yeah, from my faith, that I believe that God works in many different ways, and God has a place for all of us, if it's here or if it's, and sometimes, yeah, we need to make hard decisions to get our course right again, and to get that error in our compass to set that right. When I got that title, I was actually funny because at the moment we have a compass adjuster. He's setting our compass right now on the bridge. We have an outside company, and we had some issues with our compass, and he's working on that. And I just thought that was funny, how God works in mysterious ways. But yes, we do get those errors. That's also as a leader for myself as well, but also in the community that we serve here on board. It's only 3 minutes left, Ropa. My goodness. That's amazing. So, yeah, we need to adjust at times. And sometimes that's also a hard decision. Sometimes it is also a hard decision as a leader for yourself. And for me, being a leader, I had to step up a few times and stand in front of the community and just explain that I did something wrong. And I think that's I think, in my view, one of the biggest challenges, but at the same time also times where you can really show your leadership in this community. Being a leader here on board and stepping up for this community, we're faced with many challenges to step up, but to me it is really showing that respect to one another here on board, to know, and for me as well, because I see myself as only a small part of the community and the work that we do. Without sailing from here to Africa, we wouldn't get there and we wouldn't be able to do the work. At the same time, I'm not anywhere bigger or whatsoever than the one who's cleaning here on board as well. And to see and to also recognize that as a leader, to recognize each and every person, and we do that also in our community, and we get people standing up, etc., to say, hey, your job is that part, and the Bible speaks about it, of course, that we're all working together as one body, but that part, what you're doing, makes that surgery happening on board, or it makes that the training is taking place. And of course, as a leader, you have to stand up and you have to also take your responsibility, but at the same time, yeah, showing and showing that humbleness to know that you're part of this entire community where we do all the work hand in hand. I had way more to say, but I will just hand it over to Ropa, because otherwise we're going over time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Captain Julian. You're very tall, so I have to sort of adjust the mic. No, it's fine. It's fine. Thank you so much. That was really inspiring. What I took away from that the most was, well, first of all, what you said about leading in community, and anyone who understands how Mercyships works, or anyone who sort of got insight into how Mercyships operates, you know that community is at the center of everything. And so one of the things that I took away from what you said about leading this community on board is I guess, the importance of humility. So thank you for that. I really appreciate that. Quite nicely, actually, the next speaker that we have is going to be talking about healthy growth, and I think that ties in very well with what we've already heard. And so I'd like to welcome Toys Visser. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And he's going to give us a lovely speech on healthy growth, as I mentioned. And now Toys is a Christian businessman with plenty of experience in running companies, and he's currently the CEO of Raycon, which is a specialist company in the field of repairs, maintenance, and deliveries of various seafaring, fishing, and inland vessels. So again, I will let him introduce himself and also give us a speech or a talk on healthy growth. Thank you, Toys.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Europa. I assume you can all hear me quite okay, so, right? Well, I'm really pleased to be able to speak to you young leaders. The only thing is it makes me feel a bit old. So I like to talk about experienced leader, maybe, right? But to introduce myself, I'm Teus Visser, but I also listen to Toys or Theus or whatever suits your needs. I'm 44 years young, I'm married, and we have 3 beautiful kids. I live quite close to Rotterdam in a small town. And as told, I'm the managing director of Raycon. And it's a company in the maritime industry. We are a supplier towards yards and shipping companies, mainly in water-related products. So pumps, water makers, ballast water treatment systems. And some of those products are also installed on the Global Mercy. So of course, we hope to be part of the future of the Global Mercy. And apart from this job, I've been trying to constantly keep developing myself as a leader. So now, apart from my job within Raycon, together with 2 other entrepreneurs, we are advising, coaching, helping organizations, entrepreneurs, leaders with strategic questions they come up about. For me, this is the ultimate way to keep on learning, just by telling others what you've learned. And to push myself to read, to write, because we're also finalizing a book to put on paper what we have learned so far. And already to zoom in a little bit, the name of the company is Voorwaarts. And for the non-Dutch speaking people amongst us, I'm going to try to translate that. It's something like go forward or keep on moving. And of course, we've chosen this name for a reason. And I'm not sure how many of you have been following business education, as I did. In my experience, when you're thought about business principles, it's about 2 things. It's about maximizing the turnover and the profits, and it's about minimizing the risks and the costs. And that's not what we do. That's not what we stand for. We want to move forward with companies, with leaders, no matter where they are. So if you're on top of the mountain, we want to join you and help you out. But also if you're in the middle of the storm or in a tunnel and don't see a way out, we want to help you move forward. And in our opinion, it's not about maximizing. It's about balanced growth. And I hope you've heard about Kate Raworth and her book, Donut Economy. Anyone ever heard of her? And I hope it inspires you to have a look at it, because it describes the 21st century challenge to meet the need of all within the means of the planet. So let me say it again. It is the challenge to meet the needs of all within the means of the planet. So no one falls short on life's essentials: food, housing, healthcare, whilst ensuring we do not overshoot our pressure on the basic of Earth. So she calls it the social foundation and the ecological ceiling. And we have to operate within those 2. As a leader, you have a responsibility there. But there's more. We believe that besides this, as a leader, you have to operate as well within an area between responsibility towards family and your personal health. We have been talking to entrepreneurs and leaders too often with problems like burnout. But I'm going to show you our model. But I have to give a disclaimer up front. It's not a model to success. It's not a 10-step way to change. The success is not in a model because every person, every leader is different and needs to be approached differently. Every human acts different. And of course you know this, because if you're a leader, you've been trying to change patterns and you've been trying to change people and you're using methods and you found out that it's a different situation each time. This model is just something we use as a guide towards leaders and entrepreneurs and companies. So let me show you. It's a triangle. And it has a reason. I don't know if you know the word triad, but when it comes to three, it remembers more easily. It works more easily. So that's the only reason why. And when we look to a company, we look to 3 issues. The first is people, the people within the company. The second is the organization. And the third is strategy. And we believe that if you have a healthy company, healthy people within the company, and a healthy strategy, you're able to stand out towards your competition. You're able to create a strong identity within your company. And you're able to create a strong focus. And of course, we're here as leaders. So let me zoom in on the triangle of people. Again, 3 issues. We believe that if you have people actively involved in your company, in your organization, in your church or wherever, you need to make sure that there is inspiration. You need inspired people. You need to make sure that there is leadership to guide the people. And you need to make sure that the interaction between the people is healthy. That's a really difficult issue. We just learned from the captain. The issues we face on a day-to-day business is all about interaction. And to cope with that, you need to have strong leaders. And that's what you are, where you come in, right? So, leadership. 3-step to change, hopefully. And we start with self-insight. And I'm not going to tell you everything, so I'm going to ask you. If you look on your own leadership, I don't know where you are placed and I don't know where you're active, but give me your pitfall. Think of your position as a leader at the moment and where are you struggling at the moment? And where lies your pitfall at this moment? And I'm going to give you 30 seconds to exchange that one with your neighbor. Please do. What is your biggest pitfall at the moment as a leader? And since you're all leaders, I'm going to work fast because I assume you've already shared it, right? Okay, please. 30 seconds only, eh? We have to work efficiently, please. Okay. Self-insight. It should be something that you work on daily. It's something that you should reflect on daily. And how do I do that? How I hope you do it. For example, if you start your day by reading the scripture, by reading your Bible, it's a mirror every day. It's a mirror that gives you self-insight on your life at this moment and the life you want to proceed. So I hope that you were not as surprised with the question, and I hope that your pitfall was on top of mind. Not to focus on it, but because you're already working on it. Because that's the second step, self-leadership. How can you ever lead others if you're not able to lead yourself? So being on time, having your stuff in order, living your life as it should be, communicating well. Self-leadership is one of the most important and most difficult issues of a leader. Because what we say, the sins of a leader counts double. Because what you do wrong, I can assure you that your people do the same. How can you ever lead if you're not able to lead yourself? So another 30 seconds to tell what you are working on, how you make sure that your pitfall becomes your strength. I assume you're already working on it. Please share with your neighbor, 30 seconds. Okay, we want to take far more time than we do now, of course. It's just to give you an example. But please be aware that this should be your daily basis. Reflect on how you are as a leader, how you are reflecting yourself towards your people, your employees. Because leadership is you being able to use your unique talent to the max, influence others, and build towards a greater cause. And of course, this takes time. It's not that you can achieve the best, the 100% leadership. I've learned from Paul Donders. He wrote a book about mastery, and he told me that you need to have 10,000 hours of experience to become at that level. But even if you have made the 10,000 hours, you make mistakes. But still, be able to lead yourself. And then what we found is that we were not able to help any leader. We were not able to help any company, any organization. And the question was why? And what we found out that we needed people that worked from the heart. And I'm not sure if you know the toy that is a fidget spinner. Is it also something that was popular in other countries? It was very popular in Holland. There was in the middle, you had something and there were 3 arms and you could spin it like crazy, a spinner. And we believe that our triangle is only going to spin if the center is good, is centered, if it's working from the heart. You need to have healthy principles as a leader, but also you need to have healthy principles as an organization. To zoom in a bit, Mercy Ships, I hope you know the mission of Mercy Ships. I had to look it up, of course, because it's not on top of my mind. I hope it is on the ones working within Mercy Ships. It states, we follow the 2,000-year-old model of Jesus, bringing hope and healing to the world's forgotten poor. Wow. If you talk about a center, if you talk about from the heart, we follow the 2,000-year-old model of Jesus. So I assume there's no exploiting of people here on board. I mean, that couldn't fit. There's no working 80 hours for weeks, exploiting yourself. There should be a balance, right? And that's what Kate Howard was also trying to explain. You have to work within the boundaries given by nature, given by God. And I hope as a leader, you respect those. Because if you work against them, you get splinters. I can assure you. Please, take this into account. And I'm gonna already close. And I give you some homework. I'm gonna challenge you to find your heart, to find your deepest drive, your deepest motivation, and put it on paper. I hope you already done it. What helped me was this book. It's called Man's Search for Meaning. It's written by Mr. Frankl. He's a Holocaust survivor. And he survived camps, and he said, he who has a why can bear almost any how. He who has a why can bear almost any how. And I hope that you find your why as a leader, as a person within a company, within a church, wherever you're placed, so you can work from the heart and use the principles of the kingdom. Thank you.
Wow, that was brilliant, actually, and thank you for sharing that. I was making notes as you were going along, and I love what you said about self-reflection and being willing, I guess, and allowing ourselves to make mistakes. I love that, and also love what you said about working from the heart and having solid principles, being a person of integrity. And fun fact, I just read that book last month, and honestly, it's life-changing. So if anybody else does read it, it's a fantastic book. So thank you for that recommendation. We're now going to take a quick coffee break. I'll give you 5 minutes for a quick coffee break before we welcome our next speaker. So feel free to help yourselves. Anyone tuning in at home, feel free to take a little break. We'll join you, everyone in the room, in 5 minutes' time. Thank you. All right, everyone. I hope that you enjoyed your coffee break. I'm really excited to welcome our third and final speaker for this event. His name is Henk-Jan Brommer. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Apparently I did. Awesome. So he's going to be giving us a talk entitled Lessons of a Struggling Wannabe Professional. That sounds very intriguing. I'm excited to hear that. Now, Henk-Jan is a 45-year-old father of 5 sons. So I imagine you probably learned a lot about leadership and humility in raising those 5 sons. He has worked as a teacher, as a trainer, as a coach, youth pastor, and also as a talent manager. So in his talk, he's going to be sharing his lessons learned in these many different roles. So get ready to be inspired, to learn from his mistakes, and also just to enjoy and have a laugh as well. So let's welcome Henk-Jan to the stage.
Good afternoon, and thank you for being here, and thank you for having me here for a bit as well. I am absolutely thrilled to be here and to be able to share some of the things I've learned over the years. So let me introduce myself. Indeed, my name is Henk-Jan Brommer. In Dutch, I always explain that my last name translates to moped. So if you want to refer to me as Mr. Moped, I'm perfectly fine with that. And it's a name that at least Dutch people always remember. And that's cool and easy. I live in the beautiful city of Hattem, which is close to Zwolle, but in the Netherlands, everything is close to each other. Are you? Zwolle, that's the place to be, right? Too bad Zwolle is on the wrong side of the IJssel, but never mind. It's all a matter of perspective, yeah. I'm married this year for 25 years to my fantastic wife, Eline. And like Ropa mentioned, we have 5 sons indeed, in the age range of 11 to 23. That has taught me a bit about leadership as well, but I will not share everything with you on that. But if you have any questions, feel free. We can have a chat afterwards. Aside of being a father, I'm very active in our local church in Hattem as well. I've been doing youth work there for 23 years already and still enjoying every minute of it. And I also have a day job. I work for HSO, which is an IT company in Veenendaal. And at that company, I'm responsible for our corporate academy. So I need to ensure that everyone in the company gets the opportunity to develop themselves, to learn about the applications we work with and the skills needed to perform our day-to-day job. That is 50% of my job. The other 50%, I'm a talent manager for a group of young professionals, talking about leadership. So I have 2 questions to get you started and to see if my story might make sense. So the first one is, have you ever been in a situation in which you felt you've done everything you could, you gave everything you had, but hardly anything happened? Can I see hands if it's a yes? Yeah, I'll raise mine as well. Woo, that's a lot. You're in good company. Secondly, have you ever been in a situation in which you thought, can this ever be fixed? Okay, thanks. You're not alone. I will share some lessons I've learned, and hopefully they can help you a bit as well. Because I struggle every day as well, but I'll get to that a bit later. The first and most important lesson, I think, is that leadership isn't something like a quick win. It's not on the top right a sprint you take. It's more like a marathon on the top left. I also don't think that being a leader is always the bottom right, a walk in the park, an easy thing. No, it's rather on the bottom left. It can be a challenging hike with great views, but also great challenges ahead. So, what is the pitfall, I think? As human beings, or at least let's stick to me as a human being, I love to see results. I take action and I have immediate results. That's what I like. It makes me feel like what I'm doing makes sense. But what happens if you do not get immediate results? That's, I think, one of the things in which your leadership skills will be challenged. Do you think it's a sprint? Or are you aware of the fact you're actually running a marathon? I've learned that it might take quite some time for people to change, for myself to change, for situations to become different. You need to keep repeating a message, for instance, and you need to keep going forward in the direction you have. You need to work from the heart and stick to it and go for it. But working with people in a leadership role requires investing time in people. I love the fact that Julian said, as a captain, I'm just as equal as a person who does cleaning. And that goes for every role on a ship. That makes perfect sense. So you need to invest time in that. You need to communicate. You need to stay in touch, make connections with people. And that is not something that is done in a sprint. You run in, deliver your message, and you're back at it. It takes time, and it's something you need to balance your energy in as well. If we talk about the growth pyramid, it's all about balancing. If you run a sprint, it is perfectly fine to give everything in just a few minutes. But in a marathon, you really need to consider wisely what you will be doing. And here's a bit of proof that I can speak from my own experience in this. And this is a second lesson I've learned. I had never imagined myself running a marathon. I mean, I love couches. I love sitting on them. It's fantastic. This is a picture taken in May 2015. It's 7 years ago already, but I can honestly say I remember most part of the marathon I ran. It was a marathon I ran in Uganda for charity. Maybe you've heard of Compassion, but it's an international organization looking after children in very poor and extreme situations. And I went to an event and, oh man, I can talk about this marathon and the story behind it for hours and hours. So feel free to reach out to me after this one, because Ropa is like, no, not hours, no, I won't. But it was a fantastic experience. But before I started training to run for a marathon, I had not run a single mile yet. So that's my second lesson. I think each and every one of us is capable of doing amazing things. But what you need for that to happen is the right heart, the right focus, or even purpose. I did the ship tour earlier this morning, and the two founding people talked about having purpose as well. It was their purpose to establish mercy ships. And you can see what happens if people have purpose. It drives them. It drives a couch potato like me to run a 42-kilometer marathon in Uganda at 28 degrees because we started early in the morning. It is insane. And when I signed up to do so, friends of mine said I had absolutely lost my mind. But the reason why I managed to do it was simply by preparing for it. I trained for a year and a half, and because I had purpose. It drove me to deliver a fantastic marathon. And yes, it did cost me 5 hours. I didn't go on stage like being number one or anything. Didn't matter. The purpose was to run for compassion. Fantastic. So the third lesson I would like to share with you: dare to make mistakes. I struggle every day. I make lots of mistakes. And I'm not ashamed about it. I share those mistakes. I encourage people I work with, people I lead, to make mistakes as well. Because that is what you learn from. If I don't allow myself to make mistakes, how will I allow the people in my environment to make mistakes? So I'm completely open about it. And preparing for this presentation, there was one mistake that came to mind, which was very obvious, and I'd love to share it with you. Imagine you're at a rather conservative church, delivering an evening for the youth in the church on a very sensitive topic, the biblical view on sexuality. We prepared with a group of people and we were like, okay, let's have a very honest, open communication about sexuality. So without any shyness or anything, I took a marker and on the whiteboard I drew big letters S-E-E-X. Only to find out it was a permanent marker. In a very conservative church, in the main hall, and the whiteboard was screwed to the wall. I felt screwed myself as well. So we had a bit of a conversation. How are we going to fix this? Can this ever be fixed? And we had like, okay, there's no option. I mean, we tried, and licking and squeezing and trying, but it didn't come off. So we kept it on there. And for the next week and a half, with everyone passing by, etc., we had the most beautiful conversations. So once you think, this won't come off, this is unfixable, see if you can make the best of it, given the fact that it's there. We had some beautiful conversations. We didn't think about that in advance. A second thing about making mistakes is that it pushes you out of your comfort zone. And the cool thing is, outside of your comfort zone, that is where the magic happens. So making mistakes allows you to get out of your comfort zone. And the last lesson I would like to share with you is to be open to other people's opinions, other people's views, especially if you work with young people. They may have completely different views than you have. Please don't be shocked too easily. Do not judge them, because that's what they suffer from a lot already. I never forget, how decisive a certain point in time can be, a certain contact you have with a person. They may carry that with them for a long time. I remember this young man I had a conversation with. It was in the middle of the night, really at 2 or 3-ish. That is in the middle of the night for me. I was still up, he was still up. We had a chat sitting by the fire, and he admitted at that time, we were with a group from church, so it's all believers, all people, hallelujah, and he was in a place very far away from God. And we had this conversation, and I remember the conversation as well. And all I asked was, okay, how did you end up in this situation? What is it like to be in this situation? I only showed interest in him as a person, and then we both went to bed, and we didn't see each other for a long time. And 12 years after, he reminded me of our conversation. And he said, and I didn't expect that, but he said that has been kind of a turning point in my relationship with Jesus, because there was no judgment in the conversation we had. I was allowed to be where I was at that time. And the cool thing is, he's still a brother in Christ. Amen. So, to sum up, yes, Ropa, I'm finishing up. Leadership, I think, is a marathon rather than a sprint. And if you have purpose, you can run a marathon as well. And it's okay to make mistakes. They push you out of your comfort zone and allow you to learn and to grow. And finally, be open. Be there and be like Jesus. He didn't come to judge either. Thank you very much, and God bless.
Thank you so much to all three of our speakers, Julian Thuis, close enough, and Henk-Jan. Honestly, thank you so much. I'd love to invite you all to come and stand for a small little Q&A session. I loved what you said about the comfort zone, and outside of that being where the magic happens. I'm taking that as a personal sort of thing, because actually, as much as I enjoy speaking, it's definitely outside of my comfort zone. So I resonate with everything you said. So I will now open up the floor to any questions or any comments from anything you've heard. So just to remind you, Captain Julian spoke a little bit about sort of adjusting and knowing your compass era. Then we also had to talk about healthy growth. Then, of course, we also had to talk about leadership. And what I remember was the donut economy. So I invite the floor. Do we have any questions at all? Any comments on anything that you've heard so far this afternoon? If not, I have plenty. I guess I'll start then. Yes. Perfect. No problem. So I have a question, and I guess I'll direct it towards you. You mentioned a little bit about going beyond your comfort zone, and you also talked about caring about people without judgment. My question then to you would be, how do you know when you're sort of too far out of where you stay? So, for example, we heard somebody talking about integrity and knowing what your values are, what having a solid kind of grounding and foundation. How do you sort of balance that side of things, staying true to who you are and going beyond what is comfortable? Can you give any advice on that? And if you could stand within shot of the camera, that'd be helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I think the mic is on, yes. On the one hand, I think it's a matter of gut feeling. I think we all have, well, using Julian's symbol again, I think we all have like an internal compass that tells us this is how far things can go. So on the one hand, I think it is already in us. On the other hand, I think we need what Toos already pointed out, a sense of where your heart is. If you know what your purpose is, what your why is, and I actually had a bit of book advice as well. I skipped that due to time. Not all readers are leaders, but all leaders are readers. I love that. I love to read as well, by the way. So I would like to advise Growing Young. It's a fantastic book on young leaders, especially in communities. And I also had the Start With Why by Simon Sinek on there, finding your why. I think that is very important. So on the one hand, it's a combination of your internal compass, your feeling of right and wrong anyway, and on the other hand, knowing your why. What is the reason you do certain things, and based on that you can decide, will I do it, yes or no? Is it in line with my why? Does that answer your question?
I think that's a fantastic answer. Yes, of course.
Yeah, what I would like to add to that is that I'm not sure how it works in other cultures, but in Holland, we tend to focus on numbers, and we grade people. Yeah, in school you get a grade, and when you go home with your report and with all the grades on it, your parents are like, "Oh, you have a 5 or a 4. It needs to be a 6 or a 7, right?" And I know in other cultures you have different methods, an A and a B. We always focus on where you're not good at, and we push you outside your comfort zone to get a 6. But what I would love to tell you is to go for the 7 and go outside your comfort zone in what you're good at and make it a 9, right? So yes, you should go out of your comfort zone, but not in something you're not good at. If you're a leader, you know by heart, and then become a 9. Please push to the max, because even what I do is outside my comfort zone, right? I'm not used to speak in front of people every day. I do it once in a while. It's outside your day-to-day comfort zone. But if you do it often enough, you can make it a 9, and you can make it feel like home.
Wow, that's really inspiring. Thank you. And I love what you said about focusing on your strengths as opposed to focusing on the areas that you're not so strong in. That's something that professionally with the people I work with, we've tried to focus on. So it's really helpful to work in a team and understand Roper's strong at this, Julian's strong in this. And so rather than focusing on, as you said, what I'm lacking in, it's better to say, well, I may not be the best in organizing events, for example, but if you want someone to speak or if you want someone to keep people to time, then I'll do that. For example. Just as an example. So I do have a question, actually. Now I think I'll direct it to the both of you. I mean, you spoke, Toys, on healthy growth, and so my question is more around boundaries. I think you touched on it a little bit more. And so as you are sort of developing yourself and as you're putting in place things, to go further in your career, you mentioned that it's good to have a healthy balance and boundaries. So can you give us some tips and advice on someone who may be ambitious, someone who maybe wants to go further, wants to go the next step? Is working 80 hours a week, is that necessarily always a bad thing? So how do you sort of practice healthy boundaries when it comes to family, when it comes to friends, and that sort of thing?
Yeah, that is something that is really difficult, because if you look at politicians in Holland, they are the worst example, and they are leading the country, right? So they work for 24 hours a day. I really don't believe in that. If you can do your work in 40 hours, start looking for something else, or it should be in a short period of time. Of course, you have some weeks or some period of time that it's crazy, and you take a sprint. But life is the marathon, and maybe some jobs are the sprint. I try to sport 3 times a week. And as a managing director, people call me crazy. How can you find the time? But I know from heart, if I don't do it, I'm not healthy. I can't provide the people I'm working for with the energy they need. So yes, it's discipline. And it's a word we don't want to hear, right? We don't like discipline. But execution and discipline are the most difficult parts of being a leader. And if you can't lead yourself, how will you be able to lead others? So yes, you have to guide yourself to work as maximum as you can handle. If it's 40 hours, if it's 50 hours, I'm okay with that. But if it becomes 60 or 70, I just don't believe in it. And do you go for a sports or for relaxation or for family? It should be a part of your life. Please.
So please take rest and please have boundaries that are healthy. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I guess the final question from me before again we open it up to the floor is directly towards you, Captain Julian. You mentioned that relatively early on in your career with Mercy Ships, you had a difficult conversation with a leader, and you mentioned that it may not have been easy or appreciated at that time, but further down the line, once there'd been time, I guess, for the person to reflect on the situation, once they got the support and so on, that person actually came back to you and thanked you and appreciated the stance that you took in their life. So my question towards you is, do you have any guidance or any tips that we can have as young leaders when it comes to having difficult conversations? Because oftentimes, sometimes I find myself in a room where I'm maybe the youngest in the room, and sometimes it can be hard to raise your voice when you're, I don't know, the only female, the only black person, the only whatever, fill in the box. It can be difficult sometimes to say something when you kind of stand out, especially being a young person. So what tips or advice would you give us for having these difficult conversations that have been led by, your reason why, your purpose, your passion, you're trying to be disciplined and so on and so forth. So how can we as young leaders have difficult conversations that are necessary in leadership?
Actually, I didn't have a book recommendation, but in Mership's we use the book for that, actually, Crucial Conversations. Very good book as well. So here's my tip. I mean, that's a very good question, and I think it becomes even more challenging when you work in a very international environment with many different cultures. And in that way, it is also really knowing culture, certainly here on board or in this organization. Another good book tip for that is actually Culture Map, maybe. You know that book possibly as well. Another good tip. But really, I think it needs, of course, a group approach, but at the same time, it really needs also an individual approach. And you need to, you need to know your audience. That's here as well. But you need to know your audience. You need to know to whom and with whom I actually dealing. When I first started Immerships and I took a leadership position, that was to me a big challenge because I just knew one way. I came from commercial sailing. Commercial sailing is if you have 4 stripes, then you're the boss, and you tell the one with 3 or 2 or 1 stripes what to do. That doesn't work that way here. We do get sometimes from commercial world leaders coming in, and they act according to that, and that's just not the way we operate. And I think that's also not the way we operate in a Christian community. So it's really coming to that person, knowing that person. That comes back to actually knowing also them ahead of time, know your employees, know whom you're working with, so that you can approach them in a group way. Of course, we have our policies also here. We have our ways of doing things, but at the same time, we're dealing with individuals, and an individual needs an individual approach, and also coming alongside that person, and also being brave at times to take the difficult steps and really to be upfront as well. We as Dutch, we can be very upfront, we can be very direct, and that's also not always the way in a community like this. So for me, it's an individual approach, of course, with a group setting, within a group setting.
No, that's fantastic. Thank you so much.
Oh, that's a good question. I think so, yeah. That's Culture Map. That is from Aaron Meyer. Yeah, Aaron Meyer. Very good book. Fantastic book. The Dutch are also mentioned there often in that book. But it's a very good book. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Do we have any questions, by the way, from the floor before we round up? Final chance? Yes, one question here.
Yes, I've heard all three of you speak about the importance of self-care. What are the top tips you can give about the subject?
I think my number one tip: get enough sleep every day, every night. That would be absolutely my number one tip. We had this Dutch cyclist called Joop Zoetemelk. He said, "I won the Tour de France sleeping." Um, and there's a fantastic TED talk. Matthew, I don't remember his last name, Matthew Walker. He explains that being awake is essentially low-level brain damage, and being asleep is very, very good for you from a physiological point of view as well. So I don't know if you have any additional advice, but my personal first advice would definitely be make sure you get enough sleep.
Um, what for me works, but what I understood from coaches all around is that you should start your day with meditation. For me, meditation is getting my Bible and start the day with focusing not on myself, but on God, and knowing that you are not the one that is most important in the world. You're just a small part of a big chain. So it's good to start your day knowing that you're just a small small person in a big world.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the really helpful tips on self-care and on setting healthy boundaries and on leadership. Really appreciate it. So for everyone who may be watching after this event is live, if you're watching from home, I really hope you've been inspired. I really hope that you've enjoyed this. And to the speakers, thank you so much for your time and for your wisdom and for your insight. We really appreciate that. So that brings wonderful. Thank you so much.